Hey guys, welcome back. It's an emergency episode of the Spartan Shadows podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris. Got my co-host Zack and Emmett with me, and wasn't really planning on recording anything today. It's Sunday, November 3rd. MSU just wrapped up its regular season against Maryland yesterday. Won't really dive into the football aspect of that. We'll save that for our normal episode. We also got hockey and stuff to preview this week, basketball, a whole bunch of stuff to go into. None of that is relevant today because as of this morning, as I'm sure you've all been seeing on the Twitter sphere, internet sphere, Jonathan Smith is no longer the head coach of the Michigan State Spartans. He was fired today. The official record goes as, I believe, 4-15 after those vacated wins, but his tenure is officially over. That was announced today and confirmed by Pete Thamel. And then quickly moving after, it sounds like the front runner has emerged and is being hired. We'll get into that in just a second. Emmett, Zack, thanks for joining me. I just really want to get into it real quick. JBAT released a statement basically saying the 2025 football season did not live up to their standards for Michigan State football. While the blame was not solely on Jonathan Smith, it's necessary to make a coaching change in order to chart a new direction for the program. Everybody was very appreciative of Jonathan Smith. Players have come out, current players on the team have all pretty much came out and backed what Smith did in their tenure and how he was kind of a really good leader of the program. We're going to try to get something up on Shadows talking about, player reactions from people like Nick Marsh of China, Alessio Milivojevic, Braylon Collier, Brady Pretzlav. You go up and down the list of current staff or player members thanking Coach Smith for his time. Kevin Guskowitz, our president, also added that this wasn't an easy decision to make. Basically, thank Coach Smith for his service to MSU. The phrase "man of high integrity" was thrown around by multiple people. I think a lot of people really respected the job Coach Smith did, his willingness to take over a program in a very down state and try to rebuild it, moving obviously his family across the country and trying to rebuild the implosion left that was MSU football. Kind of a short end of the stick. It is a rough decision to make, but it is a business, and I think both the athletic director and the president thought it was time to move on. Enter new head coach Pat Fitzgerald, former Northwestern head coach. Pat Fitzgerald is who has been tabbed as the next head coach. Just quickly, kind of glossing over his resume. Him from Northwestern. He was the head coach there for many years. Had a couple of Big Ten championship appearances for the Wildcats there. Also spent some time as a GA at Maryland and Colorado, was a linebackers coach at Idaho back in the day, but kind of really rose through the rankings through Northwestern, DB's coach, linebacker coach, head coach. Winningest head coach in Northwestern history, was, I will say, fired in July of 2023 amid allegations of a potential hazing issue at Northwestern. That was later proved to be kind of exonerated. He was kind of exonerated I guess is the word I wanted. He did file a wrongful termination suit with Northwestern. They did come out.
He won, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say they did come out and settle and say that they were basically wrong about that. And Pat Fitzgerald did no real wrongdoing, so he's excited to get back into coaching. I know an interview from the College Game Day podcast has been kind of circling around today about that was recorded a month or two ago about his willingness to get back into coaching and all that. So he's anxious to get started, and it appears MSU is going to be the next place for him. So kind of a whirlwind of an afternoon. We've been watching it all develop. I'll throw it over to Zack and Emmett for their thoughts. I appreciate them joining us. But guys, Jonathan Smith out, Pat Fitzgerald in, probably a whole staff makeover coming. And we just did this a couple years ago. Why not do it again? New coach in East Lansing. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, hopefully this is the last time we have to discuss this on this podcast, at least for a while, because I would love to have a head coach stay for more than 2 years. That would be fantastic. One thing I do want to say before we kind of get into Fitzgerald a little bit, obviously the coaching tenure for Jonathan Smith wasn't what fans, what anyone expected it to be. Do I fully believe that Jonathan Smith was given a fair shot? That's kind of debatable. I don't necessarily think you can say that. With that being said, do I think it's wrong that MSU fired him? No. I think it was a decision that had to be made. I think there was signs there that probably wasn't going to pan out at Michigan State, and in kind of the college athletics world that we live in, you don't have the time to quote unquote rebuild a program like you used to. Like if this was like 5, 10 years ago, I think Jonathan Smith would have probably easily got year 3 to give at least a chance to kind of see what year 3 looks like. That's just not the world we live in. So obviously, just want to say thank you to Jonathan Smith for the last 2 years. You can tell how frustrated, how maybe upset the players are. Players seem to really like him. Players seem to even want him back. There's multiple players in media that basically said that, hey, Jonathan should be back. Like one example was Jordan Hall. He specifically said he doesn't understand kind of the hate that Jonathan Smith has been getting. Now, with the hiring of Pat Fitzgerald, the one thing I do want to mention at first is that Jay Bett definitely had a plan. And you can definitely tell how fast this kind of went through is because this truly was like the fastest, like fire someone, hire someone I've ever seen. It was like less than 2 hours, but it was obviously agreed to prior to this. Like there's probably an agreement weeks ago that wasn't ever released. That's why Jay Batt never specifically said anything to anyone. He kind of had his guy there. With the hiring of Pat Fitzgerald, I know there's been kind of a lot of going back and forth on social media. There's some people, there's some players that absolutely love it. There's some people that don't love it at all. And I think with this hiring, I think you have at least a safe floor with. Do I want to say that this is a hire that maybe has extremely high ceiling? I don't necessarily say you can say that at this point, but from rumors, from things that we have read in articles, like one example, Justin Thin, he wrote an article, basically said there's massive donor support for this. If you add massive donor support, if you add in a great coaching staff around Pat Fitzgerald, I watched a college game day segment that he had. You can tell how much he's learned, how excited he is to get back in there. And then last thing I really want to mention before I give it over to Emmett, this guy hates Michigan. You can tell he does not like Michigan whatsoever. Like even like 2011, I believe he was asked about being interviewed for Michigan, and he's like, "No way! Like I'm never going to interview for Michigan." And that was when he was at Northwestern. Like he's
Straight
like,
up turned
"I'm
him
not
down.
going." Yeah, basically turned down Michigan directly. So if you want to talk about specifically just the rivalry, I don't know how fans can dislike this because this is a guy you can tell does not like Michigan whatsoever. And this is a guy that's quote unquote should build a culture very much like Coach D'Antonio did. And I think this is about as close of a hire as you can get for a possible Coach D'Antonio type feel, atmosphere, culture than anyone in the country. Not saying it's going to turn out the same way. Not going to say the result's going to be the same way. But it truly seems like he's kind of that D'Antonio-esque type head coach with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder that doesn't like Michigan, that's Midwest, that understands what it's like to win here and have kind of that real chip on the shoulder. So don't necessarily know that the results are going to be the same. We'll obviously wait and see, but you can't hate it. You can't love it. I'm just kind of a wait and see at this point.
Yeah, and from what I've seen, a lot of the reaction is very positive, especially former player reaction is very positive in terms of the Pat Fitzgerald, because the one thing Michigan State did not have the entire Smith era is an identity and a culture. Now, I know internally the culture was good. That's no debate. But you don't have that program culture. You don't have any focus around beating Michigan. You don't have a lot of just the general discipline and theme from what you saw, say, under Coach D'Antonio. Obviously, you strayed away from that with Tucker, but you still had almost a culture more of, I would say, flashy, showy, and then you kind of saw that heavy emphasis on skill position. But then with Jonathan Smith, it all falls back to you did not have an identity with this Michigan State team. You did not really have a good run game. You didn't have good line play. You didn't have a good pass game. You didn't necessarily have the best receiver play at points. You didn't establish anything to the tight end despite having the FBS leader in tight end touchdowns from 2023. Despite having Jack Velling, you didn't really see him get established until the final 2 games of his career in East Lansing. On defense, you could not really defend the run all that well in year 2. couldn't defend the pass in either year. And then special teams, we saw all the issues with, especially on the punt unit during this year's squad. You just did not have any identity, any fundamental roots, and it just felt like the fundamental root of the Johnson Smith tenure was whack-a-mole. You didn't know what was going to go wrong, but you knew something was going to pop up during the game. Even during the wins, something popped up. Youngstown State was able to get 24 points on a Big Ten squad. Boston College, 2-10 this year, was able to take Michigan State to overtime. Maryland had a freshman quarterback that hadn't passed for 265 yards in his career, 265 yards in a game or more, throw for 500 if you factor in a lateral that was basically a screen pass. It was just, you knew something was going to go wrong for this Michigan State squad, you just didn't know what. And there was no good way to define it, and that's kind of what doomed Smith in the end. You can't see tangible progress, and you can't see player development. I believe we had this discussion before a podcast on how many players have we seen positively develop in the Smith tenure. I believe we really came up with a list of about 2 or 3 players. You don't see a lot of development and for progress. If anything, you saw, let's just take Jack Velling. This isn't picking on a player. This is just looking at statistics. You don't see that same development being open, same number of touchdowns. You don't see any of that with his time at MSU until you get to these final 2 games. So that just really becomes back to, you don't see players develop. You don't see this team have an identity on game day. And all those pile up into what you ended up seeing. 9-15 before vacated wins, 4-15 after record. And if you can't see any progress going forward and don't think he's your guy, you might as well cut him loose. And Pat Fitzgerald, I don't know if I would say he's a high ceiling candidate. I don't know how. I do think that he was hemmed in a box with Northwestern. They have lofty academic expectations. I would say they're probably the smallest budget, despite being the Chicago area Big Ten team. They might be the smallest budget outside of maybe Indiana before Cignetti. They were one of the smallest donor bases. So overall, you just had a lot of elements working against you when you were at Northwestern. So I don't know. I think he has a higher ceiling than we might be giving him credit for. I do think he can establish a culture. He has that hate of Michigan that you want to see from a Michigan State head coach, because the general tenor of the Smith press conferences when it came to Michigan was not necessarily it's just another opponent, but it was not a Michigan week. It was just, oh yeah, aw shucks, I guess we dislike this guy. But that's really it. You didn't get that feeling. Like, the only person, even during the Michigan press conferences when players were available, the only player you got the feel that they genuinely disliked Michigan would be Nick Marsh. Because he kind of had that, yeah, we're expecting, a little extra shove here, there after the whistle. We're expecting them to instigate. He was the only one willing to really, as the kids these days say, stand on business. And
yeah,
that's just something that, as someone who grew up watching this rivalry, watching the press conferences in this rivalry, that's something you need to see that fire. If you're not going to have fire for anything else, you need to have fire for the Michigan State game. And we never saw that fire out of Jonathan Smith almost ever. Apparently a great motivator with the locker room, well-liked with the locker room, but at the end of the day, being well-liked and not putting those results on field ended up dooming him. And we saw in close games, because if you're going to have that where you are a little bit behind the 8 ball in the portal, you at least need to be able to hold your own in coaching. But it felt like, especially you saw the Minnesota and Iowa games, you flip those 2 results, and we're previewing a bowl game in 4 days. We're not talking about we're not talking about Johnson Smith being fired. We're talking about a bowl game.
Yeah,
but
we're
instead,
not talking about Pat Fitzgerald right now.
Yeah, we're not talking about Pat Fitzgerald. But instead now, here we are. And Those were 2 easily winnable games, and Jonathan Smith found himself outcoached, frankly. And I don't know if that falls on coordinators. I don't know if that falls on that, but overall, it's Smith's I don't know if it falls on players not executing, but overall, it's Smith's program. And at the end of the day, it ended up not living up to the expectations from Guskowicz and Jay Batt, and you can't blame them. This is a business. Johnson Smith, great person, great coach, especially. I attended over 30 press conferences with Johnson Smith. Extremely intelligent, extremely smart, cares about his players, but at the end of the day, this is a business and it's about results on the football field.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, and just to kind of finish my final thoughts too, the biggest complaint you would hear, especially from the fan base and a lot of former players, and kind of spilling into the donor rumblings that you would hear from people, the lack of passion, fire was a real sticking point in whether it got donors not really fired up to give money to the program. Former players were complaining about the lack of passion, lack of empathy. Yeah, I guess isn't what I want to say, but lack of passion, lack of fire. That was a big sticking point. And well, Coach Fitzgerald definitely doesn't lack that. So that's one thing you'll see right away differently. He's a lot more similar to the Coach D'Antonio camp than the Jonathan Smith camp when it comes to that. I do want to say thank you to Jonathan Smith, with us getting the podcast up and running this past couple years, and the same with the website with Spartan Shadows. The end of the Mel Tucker era and start of Jonathan Smith era was kind of like really when we were getting a lot of things off the ground. So he was kind of the first coach that we had a lot to deal with as far as program-wise goes. And like Emmett said, very intelligent person, very caring person. The amount of players that have came out to bat for him today, it's kind of surprising given the way the seasons went. And that just shows to you the way he held respect of the players in that locker room. Also, just the way the players didn't really quit the season. Obviously, the season didn't go the way we wanted it to. There's no silver lining to that. There's no sugarcoating it. But I didn't see most of the players giving up, bowing out. They were fighting. Yes, these games could have went differently, and coaching decisions led to maybe some losses that could have been wins, but it wasn't for lack of effort on the players' standpoint. And I think that really is a positive reflection on Jonathan Smith. I think just maybe for whatever reason, maybe it's just the West Coast people don't fit well in the Midwest when it comes to football coaching. I don't know. But he's a great guy. I wish him the best of luck in the future. I'm sure he'll find a job somewhere doing something and be good. But that being said, Pat Fitzgerald, my kind of sentiment all day as this was unfolding, I don't think you could have named a candidate where I would have been over the moon jumping up and down for. Because for me, you could say Nick Saban's coming out of retirement to coach MSU. You could say we somehow lured Lane Kiffin away. Josh Heupel, Alex Golish, Brent Key, whoever. Name your candidate that you wanted. As exciting as some of those names would have been, until you show me what staff they're hiring, what donor support they have, how much money is being infused into the program, I don't think it's going to matter. And Nick Saban is widely considered the greatest college football coach of all time. But if you're going to handicap him with a bare bargain NIL funding, not a big assistant pool for staffing, he's not going to succeed here. So if the biggest thing that came out today was people like Justin Thin and articles coming out saying that Pat Fitzgerald has full donor support, there's rumblings of more fundraising coming in and expected to be announced in the few upcoming weeks. And if that's the case, if the donors are fully supporting this new candidate and that's their pick, okay, then let's see where it gets us, because at the end of the day, without the money, it's not going to matter. And so I'm excited to see what that gets us, where the funding provides, what kind of competitive offers we're going to be able to do in navigating the portal. As Zack kind of mentioned in that interview with College Game Day podcast, he said his year and a half off from coaching Pat Fitzgerald, I think the exact quote was, got himself a PhD in today's college landscape, and he didn't want to be considered one of those dinosaurs that ages out of the game. So if he really committed himself in learning how to maximize the revenue sharing of this day and age, NIL funding, player compensation, that sort of thing, I'm excited to see what he comes up with. And he said he's been working with former players at Northwestern, some of the faculty that he's worked with, in coming up with new strategies and proprietary stuff there. Cool. Let's see what it gets. That's the right thing. That's what I want to hear, but let's see where it gets us. So
for sure.
Some of the staffing names being thrown out, obviously we'll dive more into this. We'll do probably a whole podcast on recruits that we want to retain, players we want to retain, staffing. I would just like to think that Coach Hawk is on a short list of being kept. Other than that, I would like to think most of the staff is gone.
I was about to say Rossi and maybe Wozniak for tight ends are the two names I would throw out as guys I want to recruit.
Yeah, and then you're looking at, there's already been a lot of chatter about the potential of bringing Max Bullough back to East Lansing. That'd be great if you can get him. I don't know if you can. Mike Kafka's name from the Giants have been thrown out. Don't know if that's a possibility, but that would be cool.
Didn't he play under Pat Fitz?
Yeah, he's got ties to Pat Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I think he literally played under Pat Fitzgerald when he was at Northwestern.
Yep. So that would be cool. Northwestern's current defensive coordinator, Tim McGarrigle. Sorry, that's a tough name. Tim McGarrigle is a Broyles Award nominee for best coordinator in the country this year.
I don't see if you can, unless you can get with that big money, maybe, but I don't know if you can really pull him away from that. But
yeah, I mean, he's got ties. We'll see what relationships. One thing you're getting with Pat Fitzgerald, he does have a Rolodex that probably rivals most coaches in the country. He's been in the game for a very long time. He's built a ton of relationships. He's a Midwest guy. He's a Midwest recruiting guy. Maximize your talent within the Midwest, within the state of Michigan. Exploit those relationships, and let's get it going. So,
I agree.
We'll touch more on that as we get further into it. Obviously, it hasn't officially been confirmed that he is hired yet. I know the Free Press confirmed that's the candidate. Chris Solari and Graham Couch have both mentioned that that's MSU's guy, but a deal has not been officially finalized. So we're kind of getting...
The ink's not on the contract, let alone dried.
Kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves, but it's clearly he's the front runner. I don't know if there's a backup plan. I'm sure there probably is, but we don't know of it yet.
I was just going to say there's probably no backup plan.
The backup is probably Rossi at this point.
Yeah,
probably.
Well, and that I'm glad you mentioned that, Emmett, because I was going to throw that out. Joe Rossi was technically named the interim head coach. I don't know why you need to do.
I was about to say, I think the You Are the Program podcast, they speculated probably just your end of year meetings you have with the underclassmen.
Yep.
Stuff like that. Probably somebody to talk to the local media at National Signing Day on Wednesday, because I will be on site in East Lansing on both Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday for hockey media and basketball if anything breaks at that point, and any emergency press conferences. I will be on site for that. Wednesday, I will be on site for National Signing Day, assuming that is a go.
Yep. Yeah. And so I assume that's basically to finish up the meetings, like you said, and maybe if anything recruiting pops up over the next few days with signing day. Expect MSU to be more of a big player in the late signing day this year, obviously, for all things considered, but we do have some commits that are currently still pledging their commitment to MSU as of now. I know
a couple opened their recruiting, but
yep. So we'll get into the big guys that we would hope to obviously keep. Cade Kaufman's going to be at the top of that list, I would imagine, for most people. But there's others. We'll dig into that in the coming days. We did want to close. We reached out to a couple friends of the program that have been on with us before, just to get some former player insight on what they were feeling. I know Chris Frey, I didn't specifically reach out to him, but he's been pretty vocal on Twitter about his happiness that Coach Fitzgerald's coming. I did shoot a message over to Byron Bulla. We were kind of chatting back and forth today. He was on a few weeks ago prior to the Michigan game, and I asked if he was cool with sharing some thoughts on Pat Fitzgerald. I'll just read what he responded. He said, quote, "I don't know how you can't be excited about the future of MSU football right now. Whether you're a current player, committed recruit, aspiring transfer portal guy, or coach looking to get involved, the opportunity in front of you is so abundant everywhere you look. Pat Fitzgerald is exactly the guy we need to identify and establish a culture of toughness, identity, and getting back to winning football. This program is an absolute sleeping giant. It's not too hard to win at Michigan State, as some may oppose, mostly Michigan fans in parentheses. And when you do, especially from now, you will be a rock star quickly." So Byron Bulla, very excited. Obviously, he's expecting Coach Fitzgerald to be the guy. Matt Seibert, former tight end, friend of the program, also reached out with us. Emmett, did you want to read it? You want me to? I've got it.
Yeah, I don't have it up right now.
Okay. He just said, first on Smith being fired, he seems like a really awesome dude with a good heart. Players talk very highly of him and know him better than we all do. So from that standpoint, I respect him a lot. I wanted him to be successful as bad as I wanted us to win when I was playing. But we all know, including Coach Smith, if you don't produce, you get replaced. That's with any high-level job in life. Michigan State may not have just been the right fit or place for him. I wish him nothing but success in the future. And then he said, as for Coach Fitzgerald, that's the type of guy I'm excited to see embrace East Lansing, a gritty, tough, smart-minded coach. Yeah, we can rock with that. I remember playing at Northwestern in 2017, and that stadium was absolutely jumping. He injected energy into the entire program, from the players to the fans to the professors. everyone was excited for Northwestern football. I'm excited for us to feel like that again about Michigan State football. I'm excited to watch our players jump around on the sidelines and celebrate every play like it's the Super Bowl. I know he will bring that type of energy to the program. Since he doesn't have a current staff of coaches with him right now, I feel like the cherry on top would be bringing someone like Max Bulla back as defensive coordinator. Sorry, this is a lot, but I'm excited for.
Agreed.
I agree. I think the top thing, I think my top thing that you just have to watch, and I'm kind of withholding a grade right now on Pat Fitzgerald. I think the thing you got to watch, ask me to give a grade in about a month and a half when we have national signing, when we have the transfer portal window closed. Yep. One last thing for really housekeeping for the transfer portal. All of us are expecting there will be a lot of players at least testing the waters. I don't know if they'll go or come back. We saw, for example, Christian Phillips hit the portal during the switch from Tucker to Smith, then came back. You might see players do that because in this day and age, you might as well. You don't lose anything by jumping into there to just test, especially if you don't have that certainty with. You don't know who's going to be coaching your position room unless they retain Hawk. Then if you're a wide receiver, sure, you know that, but that's about it. Yeah, that's really so you don't know who's coaching your position room. You don't know your coach that well. You might as well test the portal. Within 5 days, after 5 days of making Pat Fitzgerald the head coach of Michigan State football, there will be a 15-day transfer window where anyone can enter. That's worth noting. As of 8 p.m. on November 30th, one player has announced their intentions to enter the transfer portal. That is sophomore running back Mekhi Frazier. Rushed for over 500 yards and 2 touchdowns this year. He has announced his intentions almost immediately after the Smith news broke, so obviously might have been tied to that. Don't know. Worth mentioning, he did miss 3 games this year with injury, including the final 2. Don't think it's a matter of quitting on the team as much as he had gotten banged up as the primary ball carrier, and this is the portal era. You might see him come back, you might not, but we wish the best for Mekhi.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, no, definitely wish him the best, and obviously we will be probably getting more players entering the portal. But,
for sure.
Yeah, best of luck to anyone that does, and hopefully we're able to retain some of those guys.
That'll do it, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. Obviously, as more breaks, we'll try to update you. Still need to do a regular episode recapping hockey and basketball. Obviously, any more football news that breaks, signing days this week. So we got a lot coming up. We'll try to get with you as much as we can on that. Check out SpartanShadows.com for all updated website pieces. I'll try to keep active on the socials to keep you updated as much as we can. And, of course, Emmett will be at press conferences this week. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Crazy day. Appreciate Zack's time. He's going to go film more reactions on other podcasts. So lots of stuff going on, but tune into everything. We appreciate you guys. Another crazy roller coaster of an off season coming, and we'll try to do our best to keep you updated. So in the meantime, have a great night. Go Green.
Go White.